Well, good evening, and good afternoon. And I want to thank you so much for joining me this evening on Talking Sip Saturday night. And if I turn this music down, I just want to say that today is the 11th of the 1st. And of course, in the UK, it is very, very, what should I say? It's very hot, you know? Um, and when I say hot, that is hot in the in the heart, but it is very very cold. It is like 4 degrees early this morning. It is 3 degrees now, or maybe it's maybe 1 degrees now, if anything. But I want to thank you so much for joining tonight, and it's much appreciated. But I want to go straight into it. In that tonight is we're looking at the dual aspect of spotlight on world affairs. Spotlight on world affairs. The world faces immense challenges, but within those challenges lie incredible opportunities for progress and change. On Spotlight and World Affairs, we believe in the power of understanding to drive positive action. We explore the complexity of global issues, not just to identify the problem, but seek out potential solutions and highlight the inspiring work being done around the world. Tonight, we'll be focusing on Spotlight on World Affairs, from Los Angeles with the fire to Elon Musk and the UK. Is it that they're having war against each other? Trump stepping into the White House again? And most importantly, Jamaica elections this year and removing the king, possibly as the head of state, and exploring how we can all contribute to a better future. Also, the aspect of AI development, artificial intelligence, with all developments. I'll be joined with my good friend O'Neill Cross, and most importantly, which is without a doubt, we have to um, you know look at something which is very interesting. And I was watching the funeral of President Carter, the late President Carter, and a lot of people have been talking about how President Obama and President Trump have been getting on. Now, you ask a question about politics. Now, is it that they are all friends and all mates, but the media try to spin it and create this level of narrative? And I do recall in Jamaica many years ago, I remember there was this, what should I say? There was this newspaper which is called the Flare, and in the Flare, in that newspaper, what I normally I used to see the different leaders or so enjoying in Jacksonville and having a good time, while everybody else is fighting and having a go at each other, you know. And that is something which I want to talk about. But let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, O'Neill, how you doing?
Happy New Year, Silburn. How are you?
Hey, happy New Year, happy New Year, happy New Year, and happy New Year to also persons who are coming on for the first time for 2025. Very exciting year, I must say, very intriguing. Um, what are you drinking today, O'Neill? I think I'm just drinking some water because it's very cold in the UK here.
Uh, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just drinking some sparkling, what they call hot water.
Well, what they say with sparkling water, they call it crystal punch. And
There you
and
go.
and actually, that is what I'm actually having as well. I mean,
Yeah.
crystal punch. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're joining us, what you can have as well, you tell us what you're having. We're having crystal punch right here, having some water. It's a very interesting here, Anil. That we are seeing, and I want to say that I've queued up uh, a couple of videos, and I've maybe to the end we can maybe look at a review of the New Year message by Andrew Holness
Hmm.
and New Year message by Mark Golden.
Hmm.
Near to the end or so. But there is something very. I mean, you're in the states there, and this fire. Yeah. I mean, you're in this. Okay, you're in the states there now, and this fire is going on. You're in that major community. What is the thought? And what's your view as to what is happening? Because it's more close proximity to yourselves.
Yeah,
Um,
it's we just have to keep the families who are impacted and affected in our prayers because as it's reported, it's one of the most devastated fire in California history in terms of
mm,
you have life that has been lost and property. Um, I think the last count I saw something like $1 billion, right? The thing you could always do, you could rebuild properties, but you can't rebuild lives. And I think
yes.
there's a lot of people who are impacted and affected across the spectrum. It does not matter if you're rich, poor, homeless, everyone is impacted. And I think that is one of the things that you see coming across is that the community is unified in trying to figure out how to sort of navigate through these processes. Obviously, there's a lot in the papers around, the lack of resources from a
Mm,
firefighter perspective that hamper um, the actions that the firefighters need to take. I think, the governor, the president, there's a lot of people who are actually engaged, and hopefully we could get those fire under control. There's a lot of accusation of, lack of preparation, etc. But I think there's going to be a time and a place for that, Silburn. But for now, is how do you, provide the resources on the ground for all the people who are impacted today? Because if you just look at the fire, some of them are 15% contained, right? I saw some pictures
mm,
and you think you're in a war zone, right? It's just the sheer
yeah.
devastation of it. And, there's a actress that came on and she made a point to say, you know, one of the things that we as citizens need to start to do is ensure that the people that we're put in to manage city resources and state resources are folks who are competent. Because if you just boil this down, Silburn, to the
Mm,
basic things that any government should provide: safety, fire, right? Make sure there's water in the
yeah.
hydrants. The fire department could use that. Imagine, you just put yourself in the shoes of any family that seen their house and the firefighting department, when they show up, there's nothing in the hydrant or
Mm,
there's no water in the aqueduct. So I think there's failure across the board, and I'm hoping that they'll use this to figure out going forward. But in the meantime, it's how to provide the resources for those people on the ground. And you're hearing tremendous good news stories that are about
yeah.
neighbors and neighbors. I heard a story of this gentleman, this organization that typically feeds about 600 people, and they just open up their kitchen and they're serving 20,000 people a day,
Yes.
right? The Red Cross has stepped in. So in time like this, we just have to come together to support the communities. But I think going forward, we have to figure out how to ensure, in terms of disaster preparedness, cities, not just in LA, but every city needs to be prepared for, when you have things like this. So citizens are not impacted the way that the
Yeah.
folks you're seeing on the television in California are being impacted.
Well, one of the things which has been coming through though is the insurance factor, where many people are believing that they're not insured because those areas are sort of hot zone for potential fires, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, so they don't have that cover. I understand.
As I understand it, Severn, they're the major insurance companies, to your point, because these are spots that traditionally have fires. The premiums are really, really super high, right? So and then the government will come in. I think I saw something where Biden said he's going to cover, right, certain
Yeah.
damage. So if the federal government could step in, hopefully that will help. It's similar to what we have in Virginia, where I'm at, we have flood insurance.
Yes.
So, for example, I have flood insurance. It's not through a private
That's what someone
entity.
was saying to
It's
me
through
earlier today.
through FEMA. So I pay a premium, and FEMA manages that fund in the event that there's a flood. Because I live, close to a flood plain, even though there's not been one in 100 years. But you never
Yes.
know, right? But FEMA has a program. I think it's also similar to some of the insurance challenges
Yes.
that you have in Florida because of the hurricane, where
Mm.
premiums are super high. So I think what government and private sector need to figure out, what is the balance between private sector and public sector in areas like these where it's prone to disasters such as hurricane or such as um, wildfire, and then what are some of the things that one could put in place to make sure these things are not happening
Yeah.
across the board, right? It's just too frequent in California, because if you just look across the world, Silver, I'm sure there are other countries that deal with wildfires, and I think we have to figure out how do we manage wildfire at the same time keeping in
Yeah.
mind all the climate impacts that are happening out there, and how do we mitigate against those things.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank people for joining. Those who are on Instagram, Facebook. Hi, Michelle. I can see you there. Paul McKinnon. Those Gifted Zion on TikTok as well. Thank you for joining. Discussion tonight is about spotlight on world affairs, and of course, we are running through and looking at some developments for 2025, because it's not all doom and gloom, because there are also some very positive things. And also, one of the things, O'Neill, in regards to the fire bit in Jamaica, I believe Trump. There's been some issues with Gavin Newsom, who is the governor, and what Trump was talking about years ago, as well,
I
with
think
Trump bringing back up. Am I correct if that is?
I think it was, I don't remember the exact year. Maybe it was 2019 when there was a fire there. And I think Trump visited, and I think there's tape online where him and Governor Newsom is having a dialogue, and Trump is making suggestions to say, hey, you have to do brush management, etc. And then I think it was in November, just before the election, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he brought
Yeah,
up that he's concerned about the lack of, sort of forest management in California, and, sort of warning. Some people are saying that he's politicizing the issue, but I think if someone give you some warning months ago and you didn't prepare, right, and now you have impact, you sort of a balance right here. But he's been warning for years that California needs to do something to do better forestry management to mitigate these fires.
yeah. I see a gentleman called Paul Macmillan here, and he mentioned a point here. Of course, fires were all planned to make a double EF 15-minute city. What is a double EF? You know what that is? Or Michelle? Or
I,
Paul,
I,
I guess.
I don't know.
We don't know
World
what the
Economic Forum, is that what
World
he's?
Economic Forum, yeah, 15
I don't
minutes.
know what.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I don't understand the term. The fires were planned.
yeah.
In this
World
time
Economic Forum, yeah.
season, you have the Santa Ana winds that come across the desert, and
Yeah.
this is where you have fire. I don't, I'm not going to speculate about plan, because there's just too many lives that have been impacted to sort of get into this sort of conspiratorial theory of that it
Mm,
was planned by the WF. So
mm,
I'm not sure. Paul would have to explain himself.
yeah. And also the online, there is so many different uh, artificial intelligence. I know we're going to talk about that, but maybe I can jump into that right now, because there are some websites which are out there, or some news station which is saying the Hollywood sign was on fire. And they came out and said the Hollywood sign is not on fire. That was an AI, and they're
Yeah,
showing some very what should I say traumatic or so fires,
yeah,
and it's not real. It's
no,
AI.
it's AI generated.
Mm.
if you remember, you recall, I think there was a landslide in
Mm,
Jamaica. I think it was last year, and then some folks took pictures from a couple of years before and made
mm,
it seem as if different communities were severely impacted when it was not
yes.
the time. It's the same thing, you're right. With the advent of deep fakes and generative AI, you could generate these content. You could have text to image where you could say, "Give me, this type of a fire and make it look this way. Add these things." So, I think there's a lot of development in terms of how do we ensure that when you have these fakes, one could recognize that they are fake and they're not actual images.
So we'd say they are deep fakes. Deep
Yeah,
fakes.
deepfakes is yeah.
Mm. But let's talk about AI, artificial intelligence. Vita, how are you, Vita? Say hi. Vita is here on TikTok. She's hiding over on TikTok. Vita, can show your face. You can show your face. I sent you the link. And Michelle, if you want to jump in as well, I've sent you the link as well. Um, the advent of AI, artificial intelligence. I was listening to the godfather of AI. I
You mean
forget it was
one of the Godfather,
one of
Jeffrey,
the godfathers, yeah. And
the Jeffrey Hinton, who won the Nobel Prize.
yes, yes, there are a few Nobel Prize guys and on BBC, and they were interviewing them, and what he said is that it is dangerous while at the same time it is positive. It is dangerous. It has a dangerous element, especially if it gets into certain hands.
Yeah,
And of course, there's the positive element whereby it is going on, but there was a sort of level of caution by these godfather or whatever like that at the same time, but you cannot get out of it because it's here for us now. It's here.
yeah, and I have deep respect for Jeffrey Hinton. Obviously, he's one of the pioneer in the sort of artificial intelligence. You have Minx, you have all these great pioneer, and he's one of them. And he just won the Nobel laureate. The way I think about it, Silbert, it's just like anything else. Just think back to the dawn of the internet, right?
Yes.
Right now, there's a lot of people using the internet for good. You could use it for commerce, but there's also people using it for nefarious activities.
Mm,
You're not going to stop that. You drive a car, I drive a car. People could use it for nefarious action, right? We saw what happened
well,
recently where someone took a car and drove down Bourbon Street, right? So I
yes.
think when we look at artificial intelligence, it's sort of the umbrella term that we all use. But I would say if you have an iPhone or you have an Android phone in your pocket, you have some techniques, artificial intelligence that's been used. For
Mm,
example, if you use Amazon, the recommendation engine in terms of what you buy, those are all artificial intelligence techniques. So if you just think about it, Silbert, it's an umbrella term. And then underneath that, you have what you call machine learning, right? It's sort of
yes.
where you're teaching machines, right, how to do things that typically human could do, and you need training data. And then you have deep learning. So majority of the transformation and innovation you're seeing, like generative AI, is actually part of deep learning, right? So you have good old fashioned AI, right? So for example, within that body, you have what you call supervised learning, where if I want to train an AI system to recognize a cat, I feed it a cat and say, hey, here's what an image of a cat looks like. So when that model sees a cat, then it actually could recognize it. So you have sort of innovation in that space. And I think the reason that a lot of us are talking about AI is if you go back to 2020 when OpenAI was accessible to a lot of folks, right?
Yeah.
So you could touch it, right? And now everyone is talking about chat GPT type stuff. Apple is coming out with their AI assistants, right?
Yes.
Imagine a day where you could tell your AI assistant to go book a hotel room in a particular city for you, and it actually go and do that for you. Or at home, you could have a learning engine that learns what you buy at the grocery store it could learn when you come in the house, the mood, and put on music, or your refrigerator need
Yeah.
restocking, right? So there's a lot of sort of innovation that is coming in the space. And I think 2025 is going to be a huge um, era for artificial intelligence. You're hearing a lot of people talk about data centers because you have, data centers that actually have AI workloads use a
Yes.
lot of power, a lot of water, right? So you see those big data centers that are being developed to support artificial intelligence, especially around generative AI. So I'm super excited, and I think everyone should go out there and get to know the topic. If you're in a particular job, try to figure out how to use it to augment yourself.
Yeah.
OpenAI has free version. You have Claude. These are large language models, a Silburn, that anybody could go test. I use it on a daily basis. I use
Yes.
what we call Perplexity. I
Yeah.
like
Perplexity and Gemini. I've
yeah,
been using Perplexity and Gemini as well. Yes.
yeah, you have things that we could do text to image. You have Zora, right? There's so many different innovation that is coming to bear in the topic. And I think this is also where I believe developing countries should
Yes.
start figuring out how to leverage artificial intelligence technique to drive more efficiency. How do you upskill your workers to take advantage of this? How you drive more efficiency? Because I think this is going to create more different type of jobs. You're going to need people to audit the models, et cetera, et cetera. So
So,
I think it's
so, so
exciting.
yeah. So while at the same time, some will argue that it is taking away jobs, but at the same time, it will be creating more opportunities as well. Just before we go, I see Paul Macmillan says AI is terrifying. Paul, if you can just drop in your comments as to why you say AI is terrifying, and persons, if you can say what do you think about AI, terrifying or it's a positive development or so? Because years ago, when we're doing research, you and I, when we used to do research, what we used to do is go to the library. And we see these big books here called encyclopedia, the yellow books, the red books, and you take them out. And that was like an exciting moment. You get a big table. That was it. But now children, they don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
There's no need to do that
Yeah, you
anymore.
don't need to do that. And we used to go look at the encyclopedia. Now you have every person, whether personal or through the school system, they do have a tablet, and these
Yeah.
tablets has these capabilities that they could leverage.
Mm.
I wouldn't say it's terrifying, right? There's different use cases. I'm sure Paul, if he has an iPhone or if he uses Netflix, he's already experiencing artificial intelligence as a consumer, right? He's probably not using it directly, and I'm just making that assumption. But people are consuming it on a daily basis. You just don't know. When you apply for a loan, right? And this is where, as we build these systems, Silburn, one of the things that we have to ensure is trust, right? That
Yes.
you're trusting the output, and you could explain exactly how you got to that output. And there's a
Mm.
lot of innovation in that space to ensure, one, that there's not bias in sort of the output. So when you train the data, because if you just think of what we're talking about, artificial intelligence, you're using data, right, to train these
Yes.
systems. The data that we're using are data that we create in our day-to-day lives over the last 200 years, right? So
Mm.
if you just take, for example, data that might have some bias in there and you train the model is going to look and say, okay, how I apply it based on how the epistemology of language has sort of evolved, there will be some bias in
Yeah.
there. I think what we have to make sure, Silburn, is that the people who are building these systems are inclusive, meaning there's a representation across communities, that you could
Yeah.
actually put in the cultural dynamics. Because one of the things I talk about a lot is around, for example, colonialism around technology, where you're building a technology in the US and you use it in say Jamaica or in Africa, where the cultural dynamics and how you use words is different. So we have to ensure that as we build the system, we're doing enough red teaming and we're looking at the output so we're not impacting culture, right? And I think
Yeah.
you have a lot of people who are making a lot of investment in this space to ensure that we could explain the output and it's trusted, right? Because imagine the example that I provided to you, Silburn, where
Mm.
you're telling your AI assistant to book your plane ticket, book your a reservation at a hotel. You want to have enough trust that your credit card is not going to be charged $10,000, right?
Mm.
So all of that has to be built in. And there's a lot of people who are talking about how do we leverage sort of the crypto Web3 technology to sort of secure some of these different transactions to build more trust in it. And from us, from our company, we have built what we call our trustworthy framework, what we're applying where companies could leverage it to actually ensure that those
Yeah.
outputs can be explained.
Well, if we look at what, as I put the question out there for persons, what their thoughts on artificial intelligence, and Paul did respond by saying, "I believe it will replace us. We are the workers for the elite. With the advance of AI and robotics, we are no longer required. That is why the elite want to depopulate, as we are no longer needed." So, what do you, how do you respond to um, concerns like what Paul is saying there?
I think there are valid concerns out there, but if we just look at the history of technological transformation, we went from horse, buggy to cars, right? Um, I think we create different type of jobs. There's an evolution of jobs. If you take for example agriculture. If you go back into the 1900s, the percentage of folks doing agriculture in the agri field is probably 30-40%. Now it's 3%, right? Because now there's technology that has advanced. So as a farmer, you don't have to till the crops. Like in Jamaica, where you and I grew up, you used to see a farmers with a fork, as we call it, right? Where they're plowing the field, they're using a machete. Now you have technology for that, so it makes you much more efficient, and
Yeah.
now you can compete on a larger scale. I think when it comes to artificial intelligence, I believe you're going to see much more augmentation, where you're augmenting the human being versus replace it,
Mm.
right? So for example, if you take use cases in the medical field, a doctor now could spend more time with a patient because they have an AI assistant that was built, all the trustworthy framework that are built in that, and they could spend more time with their patients. Mechanics, you're still going to have mechanics. It's just that you will have more insight into what's going on with the car because you will have a computer that you could read the output, right?
Mm.
If you look at, you name the industry, you still will have people. It's just that I think we're going to have a different type of economy, and you're going to have more jobs created that people are going to actually enjoy. And then what we have to do as a society, and I think maybe this is where Paul is going at, as we have technological transformation, we have to ensure that society is coming along with that journey. How do we
Yeah.
upskill? How do we reskill those folks, right? If you're a plumber today, you're going to get much more sensor data, so you could think about different business model. But I still need a plumber, I still need a mechanic, right?
So therefore, that plumber will need to be upscaled. He will have to upscale himself as well.
Right, to leverage technology. But if you just think about it, there's a lot of opportunity now, because if I'm a plumber and I want to leverage, say, AI, I'm going to come to Mr. Silburn and say, what if I use the sensor data that's coming off of your boiler? I will
Mm.
have a dashboard on my phone that you don't have to call me. I know exactly what's going on, so I
Mm.
could show up and do maintenance, right? So there are things that I think we could leverage a technology. But I think, to Paul's point, we just have to make sure we're bringing society along, right? So
Yeah.
in areas that you're going to have disruption, how do we upskill those folks to get into the new jobs that are going to be created? right?
So therefore, for persons who believe, and that's what Paul said, that AI is terrifying, or that it's going to replace us or replace workers, what workers need to do is to get themselves more equipped, get themselves upscale,
Yeah,
as much as possible, and to be relevant. But that will require some level of so okay. So that person there who has not been to school, and he's a workman, and he's a plumber, and he's a self-made mechanic, and he's there doing that bits and pieces, and AI kicks into play. He will have to get himself educated.
yeah, you're gonna have to. You're right. But if you go back, Silver, I look back in the history. Just remember when the calculator and the adding machine got
Yeah,
invented. People
yeah.
said you didn't need accountants anymore, right?
Mm,
Remember back in the day when you had the adding machine and computers, you have spreadsheet like Excel. People talk about you don't need accountants anymore,
yeah,
and you have a ton of accountants. You still have tons of CPAs.
yeah,
So I don't subscribe to the fear that it's
yeah.
terrifying. I think we just have to plan for it and ensure that the industries that are going to be disrupted is that we're taking steps to upskill, reskill, etc.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, and that's really helpful because if we if you all remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you all remember when there was the advent of the computer, then they come Facebook. Well, actually, there were some other things before. What they were called? Oh God,
MySpace. So you have
MySpace.
MySpace,
Uh,
you have the BB boards,
Yeah,
you have a ton of things. But
yeah. And
taking
and,
a
and and people used to say, "Oh, these are the devil's work. I'm not going to get into that." And all of a sudden, you find all these persons are on the Instagram, they're on the Facebook, and they're all being a part of the whole process. I see people now doing things, and I say, you're on the face, but it hasn't taken away anything. Actually, they're more assimilating.
so just think about it from a social media perspective, Silver.
Yeah.
You just think about the connection that people
Mm,
have on Facebook or Instagram, etc. Right?
mm,
You have musicians that are discovered on social media. Take Niger Boy, for example, right? Niger Boy was discovered on Instagram, right? So you have people who monetize. There's a ton of people in Jamaica, they call them the TikTokers. They're making money off of TikTok, right? So I think this is where you're creating new economy, and I think we just have to be prepared for it. But I see where Paul is coming from. I think we, and when I say we collectively, we have to push our policymaker to make sure they're putting in place these reskilling and upskilling program for the folks that we know that will have some disruption in their industries.
So therefore, have no fear regarding artificial intelligence. The key thing is to take advantage of it and use it to the best of your ability, because as you rightly say, and what I found out, that it can really create an element of would I say quickness, because at the same time, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. You don't just take it willy-nilly like that. You actually assimilate and think through the information uh, as well. But in regard to TikTok, as you just touched on TikTok a while ago, that economy, the 19th of January, there could be something happening with TikTok in America. And there's
Mhm.
this court case which is happening, even though Trump is saying, hold it, man, hold it until I get into power. Do you think it's going to be the end of TikTok in America? Or
Yeah,
going to
well, the law calls for the for TikTok
diversification?
to divested
Yeah,
from its parent company,
diversity. Yeah.
and it has by the 19th. And if it doesn't divest it, then it has to shut down. So,
In America. In America.
in the U.S.,
Yes.
there's a case at the Supreme Court right now. Based on the oral arguments yesterday, it seems that they might follow the lower court ruling. So who knows what's going to happen? But I think it's going to be up to TikTok to figure out what they do. The cases in the Supreme Court, you're right. Trump has said, hey, I could negotiate some type of settlement, but it's a congressional law. It's a law that is bipartisan. So I don't know how much leeway he has to do anything on the 19th, which is a day before he takes office. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think there's about 200 million people in the US that uses this TikTok. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out and sort of what the geopolitical implication of it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that no one knows, even though we're 8 days away. No one knows what's going to happen, but there's a lot of American companies that would buy it. So it's going to be interesting to see what takes place come the next couple of days.
So that would be a Sunday, the 19th, because it was mentioned, as you said, that the TikTokers in America, but also Jamaica would be very much impacted by the TikTok at the same time, because a lot of Jamaicans benefit from the US.
See, I don't know what will be the implication outside the US, right? So because if you just look at how you get the app, you get it from the app store. The question becomes, if you're in the US, you might not be able to get it, but if you're in Jamaica, you might be able to get it. So it's going to be interesting to figure out, to see how it plays out geopolitically, because as you said, it's a very popular tool for people under the age of 25, right? They don't those Gen Z and digital natives, they don't use Facebook. Facebook is for old guys like you, Silburn, right?
Facebook is a Paul and Michelle.
Yeah, I don't even use Facebook, right? That's how young I am.
So Facebook is an outdated thing now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, as my nephew said to me, Uncle, that's for old people.
My days. And so therefore IG, Instagram. So what is it? What is the top ones then? Out there now?
For kids under 21 is TikTok. It's TikTok, it's Snapchat,
right.
Pinterest. So my like nieces and nephew, when I say, hey, you aunt is on Facebook, they're like, on what? We don't use Facebook.
Yes.
So,
but I can see in the chat, Michelle said America always want to take control, and she said also, yes, Jamaica will be affected by it. They won't be making American currency. That is when they talk about these things called diamonds and drifters or gifter or monkey, or flowers, whatever they call them, that they give. And Paul came in and said, this is true, Michelle, but you look a bit deeper, you see that Israel controls America. Look into APAC.
that's always
But you hear what Michelle is saying then. Michelle is right. Michelle, what are you saying about that there?
Well, listen, I'm on TikTok, but I don't even know how to use it. So
why are you on it then?
I've never posted on TikTok a day in my life.
So why are you on it then?
I don't know. I just go on just to be nosy because I have other friends that is on it. So I just go on and just scroll. I just saw you on TikTok. I've never posted on there.
Yeah, I only see you on TikTok because I saw you a while ago on TikTok there.
Yeah, I just go and scroll, and that's all I do. Because all I see is when I go on, all I see is people in boxes, and they're asking for like lions and tigers. And
I said monkey. I said monkey. I mean lions. Lions is what I meant to say.
So Silburn, what Michelle is saying, I just use TikTok to fast and look at what other people is posting. That's what she's saying.
That's it.
So it is a fast into people business then.
That's I'll just scroll and see what everybody I talk about.
Well, listen, it's a funny place, because sometimes I'm going through it and you find yourself drop into some room, and then there was this big discussion going on with some PNP or JLP thing going on. And I just drop in the room and I say, "There's Silburn here. Silburn is a PNP. Let's ask." Just quickly jump out of it because I don't want to get into the
and then it tell you send them some kind of flower for you to post something, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? No, I'm out of here.
But
well,
Michelle,
don't you have to have a certain amount of what, friends in order for you to even go live, right? Something like that.
Yes, I think you have to have a certain amount of friends, yes, to
Yeah.
go
And you
live.
have to have like is it 100? I think it's
Or
the
a
same
thousand.
thing with Instagram. You have to. I don't remember what the threshold is for
Yeah,
Instagram, but I think Instagram has that same thing. You can't go
Oh,
live when you
really?
have
Okay.
just
yeah,
one
yeah.
person. I think.
But Michelle, what's your take on the before we jump? Because I want to have a video of Trump and Obama. What's your take on the whole thing in America regarding the fire?
With the fire?
Yeah.
Oh God, I feel so sad for those people.
Mm.
But boy, may I tell you, it seemed like it's a little plan. Me know O'Neill say me I'm a conspiracy business, but
Yeah, with Paul.
something seemed funny. All of a sudden the fire insurance them canceled 3 months before it even happened and all that kind of stuff. Something ain't right.
And the bit about this bit here that he mentioned about the reservoirs were drained to the fire
And
department
the
was limited
yep. Mm-hmm.
to fight back.
And
You
did
see?
you see it was so embarrassing with the mayor? Oh my God, that lady.
Oh yes, it was
She couldn't
embarrassing when
even
she came off
answer
the
a
plane.
question. She was just like, she couldn't even say a word.
You mean when she came off the plane or something like that? And
So,
they
and the
cornered her.
reporter was on her behind, and it was just like, oh my God, she couldn't even answer the question.
Yes, yes. You know, one of the things that Elon Musk said. Elon Musk has now has removed all fact checkers and have this community way of dealing with discussions or posts or comments. And Mark Zuckerberg has now come out and say that he's going to follow that Elon Musk line
So,
of
so,
dealing. Yeah.
so
Bull
before,
crap.
so before,
Yeah.
so the insurance company leaving, I don't believe it's a conspiracy theory. There was a Prop 103, I forgot when, that says the government has to approve rates before. So when you have natural fires, a lot of insurance companies say, "Hold on,
It's natural
if
disaster.
if I can't raise rates, then it's not economically viable for me to provide policies in that jurisdiction, right?" So those are some of the reasons why insurance companies have left. It's the same thing. If you're in Florida, Florida actually did
I know.
something like that, and what the governor, I don't remember which governor, but one of the governor created this system that made it much more attractive for folks to. It's still expensive, but at least they intervene, right? So I think Silburn, in terms of why, it's much more complicated. One of the leading causes, I believe, is around Prop 103.
Yeah. Michelle? Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I was talking about, when I came back to the whole bit about Mark Zuckerberg and what he recently said, that there's no more going to be fact checkers. There's going to be uh, community thing, something similar like our community response or so, or people responding and dealing with different topics. Of course, if you have something which incitement to racial hatred or allegations of crime, for violence or religious thing, they can just take that down very easily and just pull it. But what they're not going to do anymore is to have these fact checkers that go around trying to tell people how to think.
Yeah.
I mean, now,
What,
now,
what,
when it comes on to things like the so-called conspiracy, bits about like the fire and so like that, these are things that can be very hurtful depending on who you are. Do you think these are issues that they're going to keep bringing up?
I think there is, but if what I understand, just read and people could fact check, is that one of the reason Mark has sort of shifted his perspective.
Mm,
Apparently, he had posted a video. So Mark is a big jujitsu. He does, and he posted some video when he
yes.
was in the hospital, and he realized after it didn't get any traction at all. So from what the article said, he started investigating and said, "Hold on, I'm the founder of the company. I posted this thing. I was in a hospital bed, just raising my hand. And apparently, when he did the investigation, he realized that they had tweaked the algorithm according to the article, that certain medical things are not elevated. So that was when he said, hold on, we might need to change our policy. So he's on Joe Rogan podcast, and I would suggest folks listen to that podcast because it's a 3-hour conversation that gives you a very introspective of why he's changing his perspective. And he said, look, Elon Musk, when he bought Twitter, now X, went to a community base, what he called community nodes. And his thesis and theory is that, look, I'm going to trust the normal people, right? If Michelle posts something and O'Neill posts something, people are going to fact check them and say, hey, here's whatever. Let the community square decide that. And what Elon Musk has said, and various articles and various news interviews that he has given, he said, look, if it violates the law, we'll take it down. But if it's one where I have opinion, Michelle has an opinion, and someone is saying, well, take down Michelle's opinion and leaves O'Neill's up, he's like, that's not right, right? Let O'Neill and Michelle sort of, talk it out or have the discussion.
Yes.
Let the community come in and figure stuff out. So I think my opinion is that letting the community, right, be sort of the checker, I think that makes sense in my mind.
Well, come
in is where you have things like, anti-Semitism, racial stuff. I think those are stuff that they should sort of intervene in. But other stuff that we're debating in the public square, I think you should let it go.
Michelle, what's your take before I come in with my point here?
My take is freedom of speech, and Mark Zuckerberg is full of doodle. He got paid off.
You think it's because Trump? Because of a new administration? Like what?
Yep. He got
like
paid off. In the beginning, when it all started with COVID, with the COVID stuff, Mark got paid off for him to do what he was doing on Facebook.
Yes.
Okay. And he's seeing now that TikTok and Instagram and X is, like out doing Facebook now. Like what we said, like what Mark said, Facebook is like for old folks.
You
know, I don't like that song. Yeah. Facebook. I use Facebook.
my kids don't even use Facebook. My kids, grandkids, they don't use Facebook. No. Do your kids use Facebook?
No, they use other things. But I would say, Meta, which owns Facebook, their revenue last year was about $150 billion. X, doesn't make that amount. I don't believe, and that's why I said I suggest listen to his 3-hour talk on Rogan, because you will hear the man talk about why and how he has changed. Because if you notice Mark, and I'm a big fan of Mark, if you've seen his evolution, and this is where I tell folks, like, Mark created Facebook when he was 21 years old.
Yes.
The man and the leader that he is at 40 is totally different, right? Just like the person you are 5 years ago is a total different person 5 years from now. We all grow. And I think you've seen sort of his transformation in the last couple of years, because I think he's doing much, much more introspection. And the thing that I like what Mark did, and people don't give him credit for, Mark actually took a tour around the US where he sat down and listened to people, listened to the challenges they have. And I think that has impacted the way he has run his companies, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say he got paid off, because Jesus, the guy is the second richest dude in the world, right? There's nobody that's going to pay him off. But I think it's a natural evolution, which we expect companies to do, especially when you created one when you were 21 years old. So that's my perspective, right, on it. And I would say, again, Michelle, I don't know if you're a big Joe Rogan fan. but I would
I'm a big Joe Rogan fan.
I
I
would
watch
listen
Joe
to
Rogan all
Mark.
the time.
Yeah, Mark is a 3R, is a really good, where he actually went into details of why he made the switch.
Okay, I'll watch it. I'm gonna search and watch it.
He lied to the world. Zucker told his own staff not to get it, and Maravis while he removed anyone who said on Facebook. Yeah, I mean that's another thing there regarding
Yeah.
the COVID
I don't
era.
trust.
Yeah,
I don't trust though. Talk is talk, and he could talk and say this and say that, but when it all comes down to everything, it's about money, and that's how I see it. It's about
yeah.
money. That's what it boils down to.
But anyway, I
Because
saw,
if it was so, why
So,
at the time he
so
didn't come out and say, listen, the government is trying to make me do this, or, such and such is telling me that because that's what he said. He said that during that time, the Democrat government called him and told him that he better
line up.
squash.
yeah, they're pressuring. But I would also say there's absolutely no evidence of what Paul just put up. There's absolutely no evidence at all that says Mark told his employee. So, if you have evidence, you should show it. But there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that Mark advised his employees what to do. Right. And as someone who employed tons of people, I will never, right? I would be super surprised if he did that, right? And there's no evidence of that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but I'm just saying what I heard him say out of his mouth.
No. What I'm saying is, it's about him telling his employees not to take the vaccine. There's no evidence that.
Oh no, I don't know about that. I didn't.
Yeah, there's absolutely no.
I'm talking about when he said the government.
No. That's not what I'm reacting.
Yeah, it's about what Paul had said right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's absolutely no evidence that he did
that. Do you believe that politicians and leaders are mates, or they have conversation with each other regular, but being due to the fact of elections, the media and their minders put forth this sort of position and this narrative that get the people at each other's throat, and when they are together, they're having conversation.
Yeah, they do. So over the holiday, one of the things I did, I spent some time going back into history, especially American history, just to look at the political landscape back in the 1800s after our Civil War, etc. And one of the interesting things that I learned back between 1830s and 1860s, Silburn, a president never campaigned, because back then they were above the fray, as they call it. So they didn't give speech. Other people actually went out and gave speech on their behalf, because exactly this, because they want to say, hey, there's a presidential class right here, and we're above the fray, right? That changed around 1860 onwards, and we're seeing it now. My belief is it's all politics. I think these guys have gotten to the point where, if you just go back before the advent of social media, etc., these guys get along. Yes, they'll go in a room and they have ideological differences. They're still
same
friends,
golf club,
right?
and all that kind of stuff.
Right. If you when I just came to Washington, D.C., Silburn, I'll go to restaurants and I see all of them having dinners, talking, laughing, right? I think it's just recently you see the media put division, because, to be honest, as someone who live in the U.S. and a U.S. citizen, I want my politicians to get along, because I want a Trump to reach out to Obama and say, hey, I need your help on this, or a George Bush, and vice versa. I think this whole narrative where the media pit one party against each other, we should sort of move away from it. You and I could debate about policy and ideological, but if I am the current president in the White House, I would love to go talk to a George W. Bush, a Barack Obama, and say, hey, I'm dealing with these things. What do you think? I think we have to get back to that. You see, I think was it Obama or I forgot who, when Haiti happened. Was it Obama that
Clinton. Sorry,
Clinton? No, Obama brought George W. Bush and Clinton together to help with the whole Haiti effort. Right, that's what we should do. Right, so I expect this.
Never happened.
Right. I expect this. And the fact that you see Trump and Obama it was the interesting thing. You should go on social media and watch the sort of the AI generated what they're saying. One of it I saw, he's like, hey, my crowd was bigger than your crowd.
Or they're talking about the words in the magazine or so.
And they're talking about how Kamala was mad, pissed off.
Yeah, I tell you, the overdubbing. Yeah. I've been cracking up where they said, "Look at her face. She's not looking back. She's just
looking back."
And then there's one that I saw that Obama was like, "Yeah, she got a shellacking."
And the one when I think it was Bush came in and like slapped him in his stomach, like, you know.
Yeah.
You should hear that meme that they're saying about that too. Funny.
Yeah, and
somebody they said Michelle is in Hawaii, and they say Michelle is gonna give Obama a big box when she come home.
But actually, I must say Clinton looked really good. I know he was in the hospital. He looked really good for 88-year-old. He looks really good. Bush looks good. I'm glad to see. The thing is, like, Bush wife, she doesn't age.
Yes. Is it Barbara?
Barbara.
Is it Laura? Laura is that the Bush wife?
Yeah. So this is Laura Bush.
Yes. This is Laura.
Doesn't age at all.
Yeah.
And Melania,
have you seen the different jokes they are talking about with Clinton?
Melania don't even talk to nobody. Melania, she just showing you that I don't even want to be here right now.
You come in my house, look into my drawer. Like, I ain't messing with you guys.
Yeah. That's a very interesting moment there, and I believe it took away maybe even so much from the actual funeral.
But even
in a way,
even when Silburn, when elected President Trump met Biden, they're like, oh yeah, nothing. It's like nothing. It's like, and this is where I believe the media has a lot to do with this, and that's why you see the legacy media itself is going where people are going to podcasts. And I remember I told you this, Silburn. I remember there was a young woman I met in New York, of all places, and she talked about how she listened to Trump on Rogan and all these other podcasts, and she's like, he's a normal person, because you can't hide in a 4-hour conversation or a 3-hour conversation, right? Your personality is going to come out, right? You have to be, a robotic person that is programmed to sit for 3 hours and your personality don't come out. So I love, like, and Michelle, it seems like I love podcasts. I love Rogan, Lex Friedman.
I watch podcasts all the time too.
Lex Friedman, I don't know if you've listened to this one. Just interviewed Zelensky.
Zelensky,
He posted that. Really good.
Which interview is that?
Lex Friedman. Lex Friedman. Yeah, he's one of my favorite podcasts. He's really good.
What is it, Friedman?
Hold on, I'll tell you.
F-R-I-D.
Yeah, hold on. I'll tell you. Let me spell it for you so you got it. He's really good. It's F-R-I-D-M-A-M.
Yeah.
F-R-I-D-M-A-M.
Okay. He's really good. He's a PhD in artificial intelligence. That's actually how I started get to know him. I used to listen to his videos, and he started interviewing people. He was on Tim Ferriss' show, and Tim Ferriss said, "Hey, you should get your own podcast." And now he's one of the most leading podcasts. He interviewed Trump. He just interviewed Millie out of Argentina. If you have not gotten that one, listen to that, Silburn. Really good 2 hours with Millie. And he's interviewed everybody. And Lex Friedman, his perspective, which is why I love Michelle, if you would, he's like, I want to talk to everybody, right? He talks to everybody. He just like, I just want to talk to people. He's like, I love people. I just want to talk to you. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, whatever the case may be. His goal is to talk to Putin as well. He wants to talk to Putin. So he's really good. I think and his style, he's not confrontational. He's just a human. He's just really good. I really like him.
And do you know that I probably have watched his podcast before? I think I did watch his podcast before.
He was on Rogan. So he has been on Rogan.
Probably, because I'm a frequent. I subscribe to Rogan.
Yeah, he's a big Rogan, and then he interviewed Elon Musk a ton as well. So he has a bunch of 3-4 hour clip with him and Elon Musk and Rogan are really good friends.
Okay.
Well, I have to get them on my program very soon. Elon Musk and Rogan and Trump.
Yeah.
So
the interesting thing with Lex, for a year, he didn't have any followers, but he just kept doing his thing. And his style, and when he interview, he's not confrontational. He just let you talk, get to know you, and he just get to know you. I just really love Lex.
Someone said Rogan gave Lex his watch. Rogan gave Lex his watch.
Yes. He gave Lex his watch. So he's two of the biggest. I think Lex, Rogan. The other one, if you're into tech, Michelle, the other one that's really good. I'll tell you, it is. I really enjoy it. It's called BG Square.
BG Square.
It talks a lot about AI. It talks about where the market is going. It talks about it's really good. It's about an hour. BG Square, so it's really, really good podcast.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to get my 13-year-old grandson into that.
Yeah, it's really good.
He's into tech too.
Yeah, have him listen to that. Here's one for him to listen to for your grandson. It's called All In on AI. It's another one. It's really good. It's 30 minutes. Those are really good podcasts. The one that is actually also really good for folks who want to get to know more about AI is AI and the Future of Work. So Dan Turkman is his name. He interviewed CEOs from across all spectrum of AI and CEOs that are doing different things in the world. The topic that Paul brought up around work, the fact that people are going to lose their job, it has been discussed by a ton of CEOs. So it's a really good podcast, and it's done really well.
Okay. You know, as you mentioned earlier about the advent of these different leaders having a go at each other, it is seemed to be, but after look at it is the press. I keep talking about this Flair magazine in Jamaica years ago.
Yeah. It's still there.
The Flair magazine, which is in the Gleaner, and we always laugh at it all the while because it always shows the politicians them in Jacksonville having a party and them all in their shirt and Siaga and Manley, all of them having their hands touching each other and touching each other, having a good time, while the people are fighting and killing off each other. And this is the same thing here, which why many people maybe got a bit upset and maybe saying, hang on a second, Trump is not Hitler. Barack Obama actually is not that bad after all. They're actually talking and enjoying themselves. And then someone reminded me, I think it was you, Anil, that said, hang on a second, Trump was all in bed with all these guys. When I say not figuratively, they're all getting along well until he decided to run into power. Then all of them got a bit upset with it.
I was explaining something yesterday to one of my colleagues about Jamaica because they want to know what's the political climate, how people get along. And I said to him, you know what thread through everything in Jamaica? It's called the good old boy, good old girl network. Yeah. It doesn't care what politics. If you went to Immaculate and Michelle went to Immaculate, it doesn't matter. We're going to do business together. If you're KC, JC, it doesn't
YC.
matter.
You can say YC as well. No, you're Castellina.
That not count. Edwin Allen. Right, and I'll give you, when I was in Jamaica, I was talking to this guy, and he has a company that does pressure washing. And he said, he just told one guy that he went to JC. And the guy's like, what? He's like, now I have all the contracts for all the companies that are JC old man. And the same thing with a good friend of mine who has a transportation business there. He's like, when I get a JC, man, our JC or any one of the affiliated, they're like, okay, done. JC, man, you have the contract.
Yes.
No, it's much more relationship.
Can I just ask you guys what you think of this? Because of course there's something also which is happening in the UK regarding Elon Musk and the Prime Minister and Kemi and his grooming gang. But I want to watch this. Tell me your thoughts.
Mr. Speaker, we need to focus on what this is really about. This is not about the Prime Minister's work in the CPS. And I would say very respectfully to the Prime Minister, it's not about you. It is about the victims. Be a leader, not a lawyer. We know that people were scared to tell the truth because they thought they would be called racist. If we want to stop this from ever happening again, we cannot be afraid. The Labour Party has adopted the APPG definition of Islamophobia. That same APPG report said talking about sex groomers was an example of Islamophobia. This is exactly why people are scared to tell the truth. And the lack of clarity means that innocent British Muslims are smeared by association. That is not fair, and only a national inquiry can solve this. So will the Prime Minister look again at the Labour Party's adoption of the definition of Islamophobia, its chilling effect, and rule out introducing it in government?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I will call out any aspect that has prevented anybody coming forward or any case going forward when it comes to violence against women and girls, child abuse or child sexual exploitation, as I have been doing now for the best part of 15 years. But, yes, some people will say there should be a further inquiry. But that does... I accept that, but that means all the victims and survivors who are going to give evidence need to be in a position to do so. Not all of them are. I've been speaking to them. There are some that do think they are. It will take time. All of the institutions will have to give evidence. That will take time. This will delay things till 2031 also. But Mr. Speaker, we already know what the major flaws are. And my argument is we should get on with that action, and that's why we're bringing forward the bill this afternoon.
Annie, what's your take on Kemi Badenoch? I don't know if you've been following her.
I am just I'm confused, Silburn, and here's why. Just the Prime Minister just said, he agreed with certain things, but it seems what he's saying is that we need to look forward, right? We can't look backward because it's going to take too long. I just don't understand that premise, because if there are things that happen and people who should be held accountable, I think the whole of government should come together to say, we need to look to see what happened, how we prevent it. Are there enablers so folks could be held accountable? And I just don't get it. And I know people are making it about sort of Elon Musk, but I think take Elon Musk out of the equation and just look at it from a British society. I'm not in the UK, but as someone who spent a lot of time there, it's like, look at it from there and say, how do we ensure that we're holding people accountable? And at the same time, we're moving forward so this doesn't happen again. I think you could do both things at the same time. And I think that's where the conservative leader is saying, hey, we could do things at the same time. So I'm a little bit flabbergasted as to why there's this big push to say, you know what, whatever happened behind the curtains, let's just close it and then just move forward. We're going to put these bills in place, right? And it just, if you're a parent, and this is your space, right? This is where you spend a lot of your time in terms of dealing with, folks as a lawyer. I just don't get it. But I think people are looking at it. This guy Tommy, and from what I understand, he has a checkered past, but he might not be the best messenger. But the question is that what he's put in or highlighted in this case, right? It should be looked at, and I think the more I think pressure is put on, I think something will happen. But I do believe, and I could be wrong, Silver, if the public is not asking for it and the public is not pushing, nothing is going to happen.
You see, one of the things, and what Kemi is very clear on, what Kemi is actually saying is that she's not looking for another national inquiry to start the ball all over again, but looking at a limited version of the areas which weren't covered. Like when we were going on the train, and when you come to the UK a couple of times, you must have heard this thing, mind the gap. Mind the gap, you don't want to fall down. So there's a gap
in New York, right?
Yeah, so there's a gap in the evidence there, which the Conservative and Reform is actually pushing for, because they're finding out that there are more areas. But the issue that many people are saying or thinking is that the Prime Minister was the DPP at that time, Director of Public Prosecution. The Prime Minister also had his hands in a lot of it. And also, most of these areas are Labour areas. So they're believing, and everybody's scared of the whole woke thing. Everybody's scared of calling thing race. Racism is going to call, and they don't want to touch on it, Anil, and they're scared. And because again, Labour may be impacted, their voters,
yes,
as a result of that. So Starmer don't want to rock the boat in a certain way, but I believe that is what I believe. I believe he has read the national view of people wrongly again, just like how they did with the fuel tax. Sorry, the fuel which they took away from the elderly folks. Just as how they raise a lot of taxes, they keep misreading the public, and what they believe they have done again, they've misread the public, and I believe this is gonna explode. Someone said on TikTok here, we can't. What is it? Kemi just doing her job. He said, I've seen similar behavior in white men and underage Indian girls in England, So it's and what Paul is actually saying, politicians, I think what Paul said, we have a woeful problem in the UK with the rape gangs. The people are known for years, but they have tried to hide it.
Yeah, and that's where it's where I sort of go back, right? Does the people want something to happen? Because at the end of the day, the politician works for the people. And if the people don't want anything to happen, then, right? So if you don't have folks that are pushing to say, we need to shine some light on this, Silburn, I think you won't see anything that comes. And I think, and I suspect that is why Elon Musk is using his platform to shine a light on it, to say, hey, we do need to figure out what took place and how we can mitigate against it.
Yes, I think that is the case, and I hope that somehow that they get to the bottom of it. And
so let me ask a question, a much more procedural question. So in the US, you have select committee. So you have sort of the Department of Justice could bring cases, right? And you have Congress who could create a select committee. I guess that's equivalent to an inquiry in the UK. But can't another body bring forth, like the DOJ could say, look, we're gonna appoint a special prosecutor to go look into this, separate from Congress, right? Is there something in the UK like that, or everything has to start?
Well, listen to what Nigel Farage has said. Nigel Farage has said that he's going to try to get together and put together an inquiry. An inquiry will cost a lot of money, and I believe what Nigel is actually tinkering at is tinkering at a particular gentleman called Elon Musk, because Elon Musk was planning to actually send some money to the reform, but there's been some issues regarding the way how Nigel Farage responded to the whole bit with Tommy Robinson. So Elon Musk has said, I don't think Farage is the right person, but another guy named Robert Lowe to run for reform. But because Elon Musk is pushing for a spotlight on this whole issue, and because Nigel Farage is now saying that they would like to do an inquiry, get an old retired judge to do this inquiry and get all of this going, that's going to cost a lot of money that will come from the possibility of factor.
So is it like what we call a blue ribbon commission here? That
what?
costs a lot in the US. So if you look at Dodge, the Department of Government Efficiency, it's an entity outside the government. It's like what you call a blue ribbon commission. It has a lot. It takes a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And you have to have sort of private funded. It's similar. It seems like you could do an inquiry. The question I have for you, Silvern, in that instance, if, say, for example, Farage is successful in getting the funding for an inquiry, is it just shining a light, or are there things that will then get reported out to your Congress equivalent?
I guess what you're saying, will the Farage inquiry have any legal standing?
Correct.
And that's the thing about inquiries again, because even with the Macpherson report or so with Stephen Lawrence, they always talk about, are some of these recommendations being in place? Even with the same J inquiry by Professor J, I think it's J is the person who did the inquiry with the grooming gangs. There were 20 recommendations. I know Kemi said, and when Nigel Farage put her against the fence, she said the Conservatives have accepted 18, but in the 14 years of government, they did not affected it. There's a big difference between accepting something.
So it's similar to what we call the Blue Ribbon Commission here, where you will make recommendation, and it's up to recommendations, and it's up to Congress to take up the recommendation or not take up the recommendation.
Yeah, it is something of that nature. It is something of that. It is something of that nature whereby the government needs to take up that recommendations and put it into play. And then the question you got to ask yourself, how much standing it has. Let me hear what Paul said. Paul can back me up. The inquiry will be carried out by a third party. It will only be funded by the Reform Party.
Okay.
As well. And you're right. What you're saying is something of this nature. There are things you would think that government, opposition, different parties will all come together, bury the hatchet of differences, and say this is in the interest of the nation. A lot of young ladies, a lot of young people, when I say young ladies, the ones who were groomed and were raped, and so they're questioning, where are those voices? What are those voices? And some of them are coming through and said, yes, they believe that a further inquiry, limited, need to take place to complement the big one which they have. But as someone said earlier, Paul, the Labour government is not conducting an inquiry because they're complicit. That is the view which is coming through from Reform. That is the view which is coming from lots of persons, because the DPP at that time was Starmer, and Starmer would also be a question in the whole process as to how he did it. Just like how you had the Jimmy Savile. You remember Jimmy Savile, the guy? Starmer apparently was the person in charge of that. Yeah. So go on. Yeah.
No, it's going to be interesting to see what the British people push for, and what the opposition push for. It's sort of interesting. And then civic society, what they push for. I think you're going to probably see Elon Musk continue to shine light I saw some tweet around funding. He's starting to read stuff and talk about it. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, or there are other things that are going to sort of get much more priority than it. But I hope not, for the sake of the victims.
Yeah, for the sake of the victim, that is so important. Jablum Coffee, Serenity Garden, Jody Murray, how are you, Jody? Ted, how are you guys? Thank you for joining me on Instagram and those on TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. Before we go, Anil, I think it's only right that we turn our spotlight on Jamaica. Because one of the things I'm trying to do as much as possible is to widen the scope of discussions and not just focus on Jamaica with the typical thing. Because what comes through from Jamaica all the while is, oh, things are bad and but at the same time you're seeing development going on. But I wanted to shine a light on the Prime Minister and the opposition New Year's message. I want to see if I can shine a light, and I find them very interesting, because I believe what they're doing, actually, they are setting the stage for the general election, which is due this year. And I don't know which one this is, but let me just play this one. Okay, no, let me not. Okay, let's go Mark Golden. Let's go Mark Golden. Mark Golden.
Not hearing it. It's not coming through.
Sorry, Anil, were you hearing it?
No, was not hearing it.
You weren't hearing or anything. Okay. Let me try something again to see if, and give me a thumbs up if you can hear anything. Yeah.
Okay. No.
Okay. Nothing. Okay. Let me try from a different. Anyway, but anyway, while I look for that still and try to find another source, what's your take on the developments in Jamaica? Because 2025 is the mother of elections here, and could be I call it the mother of changes here, because you could have the removal of the King of England as head of state, and you could have a change of government, or you could have a third.
No, keep going.
Or you could have a third term of Andrew Holness. Yes.
No. So this is where AI comes in handy. Since your video wasn't working, I just literally asked my AI assistants to compare the two messages from opposition leader Mark Golden and Prime Minister Andrew Holness, and it comes back and said, opposition leader focus on addressing violent crime, constitutional reform, and the high cost of living. He urged leaders to avoid divisive rhetoric in the election year and emphasize unity under Jamaicans' motto, out of many, one people. And then Prime Minister Andrew Holness highlighted his administration achievements, including hurricane recovery efforts, economic reforms, and social safety net improvement. He emphasized growth, reducing costs for consumers, and maintaining fiscal discipline while addressing the needs of citizens. So sort of similar in terms of the messaging from, right. We were talking about AI, and in 2 seconds, I was able to say, hey, compare the two messages and give me a summary.
Yes. the interest. Let me see. Let me just do something here. One second. I'm gonna try to see if I can do something here.
Place where bold moments are celebrated. Today, I want to share a bold.
Okay, can you hear that?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, this is the Prime Minister. Found a different way to do it.
As we welcome 2025 with all the new opportunities and possibilities it promises.
Is it gone?
We give God thanks.
It's going. It's low though. Coming through.
Okay, once again, keep talking.
We left in 2024. 2024 tested our results. It also revealed our strength. We faced challenges with courage and celebrated achievements with pride. Category 4 Hurricane Beryl badly damaged southern parishes. However, we staged the fastest and most comprehensive recovery from a weather event of that magnitude in Jamaica's history. Within weeks of the disaster,
It's not coming through. Not coming through. Wasn't coming through.
Okay, not coming through. Okay, let's pause that then. 1 second.
And on par, if not better.
Okay, let's pause that. And
yeah,
as you said, the advent of AI gave you the synopsis of growth.
Yeah, the way I look at it's sort of Jamaica is making progress, right? And people could fact check me. I think there was a reduction in crime in 2 consecutive years. I think there was an 18% reduction or something like that in crime, which is a positive news. Serious crime is down 14% 2 years in a row. That's a trend that's going in the right direction, right? Unemployment is down 3.6%. There's a lot of infrastructure expansion that was started. I saw out in Harborview, I forgot the member of parliament out there. They were starting a new road program, and all member of parliaments and civic society are participating in selecting the roads that are priority roads, right? So I think there are progress. There's macroeconomic progress where debt to GDP now is down 70%. You know, I think what the prime minister probably starting to do, you have to explain why these macro level economic indicators are super important to address the micro level, because now you have stabilized the economy. Now you could make more investment. So the folks the middle class and the folks who are under resource, now you have more money to be able to support these different social programs, right? So I think if the fiscal house continue to trend in the right direction, and if the reduction in crime continues, right, it's a positive outlook for 25 for Jamaica, right? I believe if one of the things there's a couple of things that I think need to happen in Jamaica. The telecom infrastructure need to be modernized and upgraded, right? I think that will unlock a ton of economic opportunity, and I hope there's a focus on that for 2025, right? I think with the focus on large scale farming, I think that's going to help, right? And I think if we could get the cost of energy down by put more renewable energy online, by figuring out how to diversify sort of energy consumption, etc. I think there's a lot of things that will happen in spade that will bring more manufacturing jobs into Jamaica. Right now, you have a lot of investment. You saw the Spanish talking about another $2 billion investment in the hotel industry. You saw last year there was a 4.5 or 4.3 million visitors into Jamaica, right? A significant increase over 23. So with those trends, Silburn, I think everyone has to be positive, but there are places and there are people who are not feeling that. And if the prime minister could focus on that and
for it to be trickled down, for it to trickle down properly.
Reducing the price of energy, right? Figure out how to create the economic zones, the zones where you could unlock those young people, right? I am a big fan, and people might sort of not a fan of this. I'm a big fan to say, how do we expand sort of the Jamaica Defense Force where every person has to do a 2-year service, right?
Like in Israel, like in Israel.
Exactly. It could be between the age of 18 and 25. You have to do 2 years. It will teach leadership. It will take folks off the street, right? And it will create that network that the kids downtown are networking with the kids uptown, right? So I think there are things that we could focus on in Jamaica that is building on sort of the positive trajectory, knowing that there are communities that need a lot of investment. I think it was today or a couple of days ago, where the strip in Montego Bay, they're going to do reinvestment and redevelopment in that area. They're doing redevelopment in Ocho Rios, right? I think if you start looking at how you put the train back into service, right? I think some of those things, the blue water, the logistic hub for the Caribbean, making Jamaica that sort of central part of everything that flows into the Caribbean, because I think we have the 6th largest natural water port in the world. Right?
And the transshipment point or the wharf is in a very strategic position.
Exactly. So I think those are things that we could focus on, make Jamaica the technology hub of innovation. Go bring in, you see stuff from India has promised some stuff, stuff with Israel, cybersecurity, all these things, bring them into Jamaica and make Jamaica the launching pad for technology innovation. We're too close to Miami to not take advantage of that.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about that and we talk about the development section there's that one aspect, and you also have the world changes, which is talking about like the constitution reform and the head of state. I can see in the track, not in the track, in the transcript by Mark Golden, what he said is that defending the constitution and constitution reform, our position is consistent and clear when it comes to our head of state and our final court. Jamaica must now move to full decolonization and the establishment of full sovereignty for our people and our people. Do you think, Anil, that, and have asked this to people out there all the while, do you think Jamaicans really thinking about change of government? Not change of government, but constitution reform and change of the head of state? Do you think that is something on their best interests?
Those are not kitchen table issue. I was in Jamaica, I believe 7 times last year, Silburn.
Yeah.
And in my discussion with normal folks, all walks of life, constitution reform did not come up once. So it's not a kitchen table issue for a lot of Jamaicans. You and I have talked that they have to figure out how to message that why the change and articulate why you need this change and how it impacts their lives. Because I have not heard any Jamaican, in my engagement over the last year. Not one person had mentioned constitutional reform to me. The only place that we have discussed constitutional reform is on the show in talking to, different folks and their different perspective. But as we say, man on the ground, I have not heard one person.
They're not business about that. They're talking about bread and butter issues.
Yeah, they've not talked about that at all. But I think we just have to articulate the why and figure out how to move forward. You talk about, the Privy Council, sort of the last resort for a lot of Jamaican, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine if you didn't have the Privy Council, maybe Vibes Carter wouldn't be out, right?
Maybe you wouldn't have Freedom Street.
Right, exactly. So, and I always say it, would sort of seize the Caribbean Court of Justice and the Privy Council. And there's other people who are much more knowledgeable in this space. But I look at it from a very logical perspective that the Privy Council has hundreds of years of precedence, right? They have the resources, etc. When you have places like the CCG, you have to make sure they have the resources. So you don't have these backlog of cases, Silburn, where it takes you 20 years to get to the CCG because of the lack of resources, right? We're seeing that in the legal community in Jamaica, where the lack of resources, right, hamper sort of folks getting quick trial. So, my opinion is that fix the kitchen table issues first. Focus your energy on the kitchen table issues that affect day-to-day Jamaicans. Yes. And then once you get that steady and, people, as they say in Jamaica, people have money in their pocket, right? People have this, they have their little car, they have their little donkey or whatever they have their little farm. Then you focus on other things, right?
So therefore, like the pending election, which is coming, and the turnout at the last general elections was like 37%, and I believe 40% the year before, and it's declining 20% in these by-elections. Is it that people are not so even interested in these elections as well, vis-a-vis getting involved also with these referendum?
No.
So that's a dilemma, isn't it? Is it a dilemma or what?
I think it's a dilemma. I have heard from people on the ground so many times, Silver, that is like not voting.
Yes.
I had a very long discussion with a gentleman, and he was telling me why he's not voting. And I said, well, you're ceding your duty and your voice. He's like, no. He's like, he's not voting for any other parties because he doesn't see what they're going to do for him, and they haven't done anything for him.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And those are the things I think one has to figure out how you message that. But it's going to be an interesting year. As you said, there's an election where it's constitutional due by April or by November?
Well, the constitutional reform, but it takes us, the bill has been taken.
Election
within 9 months. Within 9 months from this month. I think it's September.
Yes, by September.
By September, yes. I just hope though that it's not going to be one of those things whereby it is called in 6 weeks and then you're trying to find out what is the manifesto. A manifesto which is supposed to be digesting the people, but it's going to be a rush thing, and that's why I believe that there need to be this set date for elections in the future, and I believe that is something that the constitutional reform should be doing.
But it benefits the party in power. You can
them say, yeah, we're ready now. Let's call it. Let's get them off it.
There is a I'm trying to remember if it was Patterson or where he called election and people. There's a song called "Fly the Gate." Fly the gate and let out the pirate or something like that.
I think that song that will Fly the Gate. I think it's a PNP one. I think.
Yeah, it's just like, but it just imagine. I think if I think the current prime minister has become an astute politician, right?
Yeah.
and I think he's gonna call it when he thinks it's in his best interest. Right?
Yes,
Any other, I can't blame him for that, right? So I think he's greased in. He's said you sort of hear the messaging. You see him going back to sort of the whole school routes where I saw him walking across a bridge, right?
Oh yeah, and it's a minor drop. No.
Don't follow him, right?
No, minor fall. Don't come on the bridge when I walk on the bridge at the same time.
Yes. So I think he's doing these things. You see him. He's going out there, the road work program. So I think he's putting the pieces in place, and I think he's gonna call it, and it's gonna be a quick one.
Yes, it's going to be a quick one, and you rightly say he's going to call it at the time, because I was speaking to Mr. Morgan the other day, one of the persons for the JLP, and we was talking about the housing project which they're doing, and as they're giving out these different houses, which is also very crucial. And I did ask him, is it something which will remain if, for argument's sake, Mark Golden win the next election? And he said, it's a policy, or it's an initiative of the present government. But I just believe that the initiative should be something which is become a policy thing, whereby it is not just something which is led by the prime minister. But one of the things, though, as you rightly said earlier, the most important thing is for the trickling down of the money and the developments which is happening in Jamaica. I keep hearing I talk about this tax which they wanted to put on imported food, but I said, instead of having this quabble about the tax on imported food, ground produce or so like that, they should be making focus on the farmers or so they can have less imported.
I think you do both from a policy perspective. You need to put tax on imported foods, right? Just go into any supermarket in Jamaica. The amount of apples you see, right? Not from Jamaica. A lot of the produce, I'll go to places, for example, to buy, goat, right? And folks was like, foreign goat or imported goat. The local goat is more expensive than the foreign goat.
Local goat.
The local goat is more expensive than the foreign goat, right? So, and that's where you have to offset to help the farmers, because if I'm making produce and the hotels can import their stuff, right? And XYZ, no, put a tariffs on it. This is what you do to protect your industry, right? People might be ticked off. Let them go buy it from the local farmers. That is where you're going to start seeing where now the hotels are forced to go buy from the local farmers. So when I put my yam in the ground, I know I have a market. When I put my pepper, I know I have a market. When I have my goats, I know I have a market. So if I know in the hotel, I need to have, and I'm making this up, I need to have 100,000 goats a year in Jamaica to service that market. That's a huge industry for any farmers to go do that, right? So I think if you incentivize those things, that is where you're going to see that trickle down. And I also believe, you and I had talked about it, if we reform these markets, like these Coronation Market, etc. I was watching Anthony, I was watching Anthony Bourdain, Place Unknown, in Jamaica, and he went to the Coronation Market. And I didn't know this. It's the largest market in the Caribbean, right?
Wow.
And I was watching Australia. Australia has similar thing. So I think if you start expanding and transforming these areas, there's a lot of economic incentive. And it sort of tied back to what I said before, Silburn, improving the telecom infrastructure. So now any one of those folks who are selling produce could take a credit card or a debit card right there in the market, right? So there's a lot of things. Put in refrigeration in the markets. There's a lot of things now that you could trickle down and start investing. And the government doesn't have to do that. This is where the diaspora could come in, right? And invest these things to help, right? So I'm excited, Silburn. I'm excited for 2025 for Jamaica. And I'm excited for 25 for the world. I hope we could stop the wars.
Yes.
And, I hope we all, take 25 to be our brothers' keepers, be our sisters' keepers, right? Let's have a dialogue. We don't have to, believe in the same things, but at least we should respect each other as human beings. And if we continue to do that, I think the world will continue to be a better place.
There's a lady who was on the fire, and she said she lost everything, and she was smiling. And the reporter said to her, "You're smiling," and she said, "I have life."
Exactly.
And guess what? She was very old. She was much older lady, but she said, "We can do it again tomorrow."
Yes.
We got life, Well, anyway, listen, I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight, and for different persons for coming on. But let me take one moment just to say that tomorrow night I'll be having Mr. Tony Kelly, and we'll be talking about type 2 diabetes. That's what we're going to be talking about, type 2 diabetes, tomorrow night with Tony Kelly. Tony Kelly, Anil, was just in Jamaica, and he did a road show. He was all over Jamaica. He went to different places. I think he went to UTEC. I think he went to maybe Immaculate, or different, all over the country, talking about diabetes and how you should.
Ask him his take on rapamycin.
What's that?
Rapamycin is there's people who said it has some longevity properties, but there are people who take it for diabetes.
Okay.
It's called rapamycin. I'll text you. Ask him what he thinks about it.
Yeah, well, definitely. And tomorrow it's going to be Sunday night, Sunday the 12th, actually, tomorrow at 8 p.m. So join me there for tomorrow night, and on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, with Tony Kelly. Our health is our wealth, type 2 diabetes. Anil, listen,
all right.
A lot of things happening in the States. You stay safe there, and we look out for the world. Do you notice how, very interestingly, I don't know, I've not heard anything from Ukraine and Russia. I've not heard anything from Gaza and the Middle East.
Because the fire has
taken toll of everyone.
Taken over the media space.
Right.
You don't see, I think since Trump, you don't see a lot about Ukraine. Lex Friedman, there was a good, if you have a chance,
I'm going to Lex Friedman.
Listen to Zelensky and Milley on Lex Friedman's.
I got it queued up. I got it queued up to listen to tonight as well. Anil, all the best, man.
Cool. All right.
Take care. Cheers. Thanks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining tonight. For those who were on, and I want to thank Michelle for coming on, Paul as well. Thank you for your comments as well, and for those on TikTok, thank you also for your comments and the likes and the gift as well, and most especially also on what do you call it, on Instagram, Eltinspire, Jablum Coffee, Serendip Garden, Jody Marie, Ted, Cousin Ted, and Marie John, and all those persons who join in. Thank you so much for joining. And of course, most likely these shows which I put on my podcast, remember to tap into the podcast, which is Dialogue That Matters on Spotify, Apple, RSS.com as well. And of course, with Mr. Tony Kelly tomorrow, the show will be on Spotify and Apple as well. That is how we're going to do it with Dialogue That Matters, sort of lifting and putting these discussions, because sometimes persons, they said, oh, they didn't get the time to watch it because they have to watch. But no, you don't have to watch it. You can actually listen. You can listen to the sound of everything like that. So have a good evening. Have a great Saturday evening. And for those in the UK, it is cold. I can say it is cold. I think the temperature tonight is, let me check it out. Weather, it is -3 degrees Celsius. There it is, -3 degrees Celsius. What I've done, I've put on my wife's car and my car, we put these things, I think I had it for years. It is like a shield that you put on the windscreen. Of course, if it snows, that you can just take it off. But I'm going to check it tomorrow for the cold to see if it's going to be frozen as well for church tomorrow morning. But it's -3. And I didn't walk this morning because it was -4. So be safe out there, and take care, and all the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.